First of all, Dr. Vud, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Glad to help.
The Schumann resonance never been recorded higher than 7.83 hertz. Am I correct about that? But now it's...
I believe it actually... Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, now it's crazy. I mean, I follow that data and it's higher and higher. And what caused the Schumann resonance to increase?
It's really electrical activity in the atmosphere. So it's really caused by lightning, electrical, and magnetic changes in the environment. And so it can go up. So it can range as low as in the low sevens all the way up into the high eights, from my understanding of it. Now, I've heard people say that it goes up even higher at times, but that could just be spikes. But generally, where you want to be is in that 7.83 hertz. That's sort of the ideal. That's the heartbeat of the Earth.
And those oscillations, how they can affect human beings and human brains?
It's actually affecting the brain. So the brain resonates. So our brains are resonating anywhere from, a beta brainwave state from 15 to 30 hertz to an alpha brainwave state between 7 and 14 hertz, or theta is between 4 and 7, and then delta is below 4. So our brains are in different states of activity, and the Schumann resonance actually affects that. And so if we're in a high beta state, we're generally anxious. And that can happen from stress in your environment, trauma, things like that. So the idea behind it and what we talk about in our program is we want you operating in an alpha brainwave state, which is closer into the Schumann resonance.
And what are the symptoms when we are affected by Schumann resonance? I mean, there are so many speculation about that. The pattern of sleep, headaches, quick changing of the mood. And what do you say about that?
That's absolutely true. But that can be caused by not only the resonance of the Earth, but our own personal lives. So what I have found is people who have a lot of trauma in their lives tend to be operating in a very high oscillation, closer to beta. And that's going to increase heart rate, blood pressure. You're going to have trouble sleeping because the way the mind, if it's operating that quickly, the mind is feeling threatened. And so the brain is operating very high. So if you're operating in that high state, you don't want to sleep. So the chances of producing the melatonin you need for sleep are low. So I sort of use a way, an analogy to sort of explain it. If you're being chased by a lion, it's not going to be very productive to produce melatonin to sleep.
So actually,
and that's the way the system works.
So actually, the people who are more under the stress and trauma, they can be affected more.
100%. And so trauma or just day-to-day stress, if you've got a very stressful job, it's going to be very hard to relax, because if the brain is feeling stressed, it's not going to try to produce sleep or relaxation. It's going to be in a higher state of threat.
So actually, people who have trauma and stress, they are affected more by Schumann resonance. And my question will be, how can people avoid that? How can people help themselves to be more relaxed? What they need to do?
Well, the number one thing that I believe you need to do is you need to get the trauma reset, because as long as trauma is running, it's going to have an effect on the way our minds are operating, and that's what I'm showing. But if you haven't got a trauma program to work with like ours, meditation, listening to music, things like that will calm down the nervous system. But if like what I say is, if you don't get to the root cause, which is in most cases trauma, everything else is painting over rust. The rust will bubble up through the paint. So what we do in our program is basically sand it down, prime it, and then paint it. So it's going to stay.
And how percentage do you have would succeed to help people?
About 90%. It's very, very high. And the reason being is because I explain a lot of the science behind it. And what I have learned through all my research is that trauma continues to have an ongoing effect. And so your mind keeps looping through that experiences, which then sets off a chain of brainwave activity because the mind is looking at old memory in real time. And so your mind is thinking that the trauma is still happening now. And then that's going to change the brainwave activity, which will make it very hard to get into the Schumann resonance because the brain's going to be operating very excited.
You mentioned in our unofficial conversation about your research how trauma can affect our DNA. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because you have some kind of fresh information about that research.
Yes, what I'd always proposed was that I believe that this unresolved trauma affects the way the genes regulate in our DNA. So the genes that regulate inflammation upregulate. So the idea behind it is if we're in a threat, higher inflammation protects us. But then what happens is the genes that regulate the immune system downregulate along with neuroplasticity neurotransmitters. So now you've got this change, high inflammation, low immunity. Now you've got an opening for disease to come in. And so if you don't get it back into regulation, you're operating from that. And what I'm showing now is when I take people through our program, we actually change it. So the inflammation comes down and the immune system comes up. And so that's where it's supposed to be.
So with this higher Schumann resonance, people are more vulnerable and they are more affected by this frequency. And what will be the most important thing to do? I mean, you already said that they need like meditation or something like that, but overall, if they are very busy during the week, how can they make some kind of quick help to themselves?
Well, one thing you want to do is train your brain to calm down. So if you haven't done the trauma work that we do, then meditation, listening to music, even exercise is actually good because after you exercise, you'll start to calm down. The brain will then start producing neurochemicals like serotonin to start chilling you out and to start calming the mind down. And so there's lots of different things that you can do. But I believe the most important thing to do is to get to the root cause, which is the trauma.
So the best way to do so, I mean, I guess people from Serbia can't, address something like these problems to you, but they need to call like psychiatrists or psychologists here. Is that the way they can go to the root and the cause of the problem?
Yes, you want to find somebody who's good at trauma. So typically psychiatrists don't do that. They'll go more into medication. They don't get into trauma therapy. Psychologists could, but you definitely want to find somebody who specializes in trauma because otherwise the rest of it is all managing, coping, and living with it. And you really want to find somebody who can help you resolve it.
And I was wondering, is that a Schumann resonance like announcing that something big, like big changing is coming because it is oscillation and changing?
Yeah, the Schumann resonance basically is just really the heartbeat of the earth. And why it's so important is that when we get into a high stress state, we can't connect with it. So we're at a very high level. So for example, veterans who have experienced post-traumatic stress will be in a highly stressed state with post-traumatic stress. So their brains are operating between 15 and 30 hertz or cycles, oscillations per second. They can't connect to the lower range of alpha because the mind is feeling threatened. So that's why they use dogs, because animals are operating in the Schumann resonance. So if the veteran is in a high beta state and the dog is operating at Schumann, the dogs are trained to get closer to the veteran to try to help calm their system down. And it's been proven that the animals can actually do that for us because they're connected to the energy of the earth, the Schumann resonance.
So, and then I saw that you are a speaker on some kind of panels and some kind of gatherings like that. And what are you working on at this moment?
Just more of the research into how it's affecting the way our DNA is, because children especially, it changes the way their DNA is read and transcribed, and then it passes on through generations. So what I'm trying to show is that if we can calm down the nervous system, we can actually regulate the immune system, which is going to change health. So I'm really excited to sort of show that we can do that, and it's not long and painful. In fact, the mind and body are designed to heal. All we really have to do is show it how to do it and help reset it. And I use the analogy of, think of your brain as a computer. It just has some glitches and error messages it's running. It just needs a reset, a reboot.
So that will be the great message for the end of this interview. So we need to keep safe our DNA.
Yes, absolutely. Because again, it will pass on to the next generation. And so, but I believe that nurture is actually more powerful than nature. So what I always tell parents is, if you can make your home safe, you're going to change the way your children's DNA is being read and transcribed. And they'll pass that on to their children. So I grew up in a very safe home. So I've been healthy all my life. And I believe that's the reason, is because my immune system was never in danger because my nervous system stayed regulated. And I think it's a key to health.
Dr. Vud, thank you very much for your time.
Very good. Nice meeting you and talking to you.